After a short break from the game to play some Starfield, we are ready to jump back into Diablo 4 for the Season 2, this Season of Blood. I will be rocking the Rogue again, and I want to share the builds that I come up with or that I try this season with you guys. Starting with our leveling build, right? So we just finished the capstone dungeon level 70 for world tier 4 at level 55, like we did in season 1, with pretty much the same build, except maybe a couple little differences, which is what you see right here, right? So because we don't have the barber anymore, which was kind of like one of the best hearts to use in season 1 for some pretty crazy AoE damage, we're using shadow imbuement. But for the boss fight, I decided to go back to the usual DPS build or poison build, which is the poison imbuement twisted blades along with the poison trap. So this is what you see me doing here, kind of swapping out a few skills on the fly, which I don't recommend in this dungeon because you're accumulating some stacks. I don't recall exactly what they do, but go in there with a plan is what I'm trying to say, right? But overall, it did end up working just fine. I did not die in the dungeon at all. So with the stats that I'll present today, the aspects, which might even be too much, you will see that you're going to do just fine, right? So the boss itself is or can be fairly hard if you're not well prepared, especially at this level. But as you can see right here, we're doing pretty well in terms of damage. We do have pretty much all the right aspects though, right? So I will clarify that right away, as you guys will see in a second with the gear and skills. But overall, we weren't in any real danger whatsoever. We do manage to get a CC in, and then we can go to town with our crazy DPS with the bursting venoms, which by the way has been improved. So it looks like, you know, this will be the go-to DPS build like it was before. Anyway, all that said, let's go check out the build right now. Alright, so starting with the stats and the gear, which we will go over very briefly because this is just a transition build to World Tier 4. We're going to basically remove all this gear or replace this gear very soon anyway. So we have about 3.3k attack power and about 5.5k armor, which is just a little bit under our 85% total damage reduction. So aim for this, but obviously if you have disobedience, you're going to get even more, and so you should be pretty good, right? As for our legendary aspects, we have might, cheats, edgemaster, disobedience, shared misery, corruption. Then for the amulet, we have blade dancer, retribution on ring 1, bursting venoms on the other one. We do have surprise on one of the swords. This just happened to drop this way and I didn't really replace it, but we did manage to get pestilent points for our other weapon. As for some of the important stats that I was looking out for, basic attack speed and poison imbuement on the helm is always a nice plus. For our chest piece, you're going for like armor, damage reduction. This one just had total armor. It did have 1 resistance and it did have poison damage. So overall was a well-balanced chest, at least for what I was doing right now. The gloves, you want crit chance, lucky hit, attack speed, all the usual stuff. This hasn't changed. These pants rolled pretty nice, damage reduction across the board with some dodge, which is helpful, but I would enchant this for armor if I were to keep these pants, but obviously we're not, so just not going to waste the mats on those. Movement speed on the boots, resistances here is great. As for our two-hand weapon, all stats, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and then the fourth one would be something like dex. This would be actually perfect, but again, we're going to replace this, so we don't care. Then for our amulet, I was going for movement speed for the leveling part, armor and damage reduction, which we got, and then we got cutthroat skill damage, which does help our DPS, which is great. As for the rings, crit chance, lucky hit, poison damage here would be great. Close damage to close enemies is also good. So overall, just go with whatever you have, the best of those stats. The other one, same concept here. And then for the weapons, kind of the same as our crossbow. We're going for like core damage, damage to close, poison damage, or like all stats or dex or a mix of both, right? So overall, that's it. That's all you really need for this to work. It was almost even overkill. I could have maybe attempted this a couple levels ago and could have potentially not upgraded the gear as much. As for the specialization, the abilities, and the Paragon points, I went with combo points, obviously for maximum damage. Our skills are basically the same setup as before. It's still Twisted Blades, Puncture, along with a Shadow Step and a Dash for the mobility. And then we have the Poison Trap for the added damage, and our maxed out poison imbuement with the respective passives. I could probably optimize this a little bit more, but what I ended up doing was kind of removing some points from shadow imbuement, which I also kind of had maxed out for the farming portion or for the mobs, and then for the boss fight I kind of just went into the usual poison trap. So again, this is not optimized. It was literally just done kind of like on the fly. Then we have our haste and into momentum. Obviously you would want close quarters combat for more damage on the boss, but I kind of just kept this as is for the extra damage reduction, just in case, as I wasn't too sure if we were going to survive, but obviously that went just fine. As for the Paragon points, basically kind of just went with the usual setup here as well. So it's my same setup as the previous builds. I think I maybe just kind of started with the cheap shot board a little bit earlier than the other ones because I wanted a legendary passive as quickly as possible since we don't have any maxed out glyphs. The first one that I literally got was versatility, so that's the one that I put in, and I put a couple points into it, but obviously this is not a must for this build to work. As long as you have a couple of points into probably the damage portion here, I think is great. You'll have plenty of damage to pull this off. And finally, the theme of the season, the Vampiric Powers. So I've just started kind of looking at this. I did not really set up anything specific. I just kind of picked the ones that seem to make the most sense for the time being. As you can see, I can still unlock a couple more, and I didn't even optimize my gear to unlock like the extra points so that I could activate all of them, right? So the way this works, if I understand correctly, is that you would kind of like select one of these and then you would like add it to your piece here, and that would give you some extra kind of like points to play around with, and eventually you would want to activate all your nodes, if we can call them that, right? So for the ones that I picked, I went with Undying for the basically the healing portion, and then we've got Domination, Hemonancy, I guess it's pronounced. This one I think is really good, so may level this one a little bit more. We'll see how it plays out later on. Next one, we've got the Flowing Veins, and then we've got Prey on the Weak. So overall, seems to have worked just fine. Obviously, this will change as we kind of max out our build or start tweaking the whole thing. So again, just go with sort of whatever you have, but you should have plenty of whatever it's called, these blood orbs here or shards to unlock pretty much all the powers, and just again pick whatever you want, right? So there you go. Overall, this is the build that we use for the World Tier 4 Capstone Dungeon at level 55, like Season 1 but in Season 2 with the new powers. So thank you so much for watching. Catch you guys in the next video. Let me know what you think in the comment section.